Mick had been running from his past for years, trying to forget the tumultuous events of his youth and his choices he was forced to make. But there was no escaping it for him or his future. He had to face it, not yet knowing the kind of consequence he may face. Mick stepped off of the train and knew he was back in the town of his youth. He had purposely avoided it for years, but here he was. He looked around, trying to take in the atmosphere, reminding him of how much larger and strong his hometown had become in the past few years while he had been away. Taking a deep breath, Mick started walking towards the small house he used to call home. He tried to not focus on the events that led him to this place, the decisions he had made in his younger years that were the catalyst to the life he now lived. As he approached his former home, he was hesitant and scared of what he was about to confront. He steeled himself and slowly walked up the stairs leading to the tiny veranda and knocked on the front door. He waited for several moments, not knowing what would greet him on the other side. At last, the door opened, revealing a middle-aged woman. She squinted in the sunlight, her face slightly familiar. She glanced at Mick for what felt like eternity before finally recognizing the young man in front of her. "Mick?" she exclaimed. "Is it really you?" Mick nodded his head. "It's me, Mom." A wave of emotions flooded her face, excitement and fear. She welcomed him into her home, both of them walking into the living room and embracing. Moments later, as she wiped away her tears, she asked Mick to explain why he had come. Mick began to tell her his story, recalling the moments leading up to his path to the present. He told her of the shame and guilt that he had been feeling from his decisions and the consequences it had led to. He admitted to his mother that he was scared and unsure of how he was going to make his peace with the dark decisions of his past. At that moment, his mother hugged him again, letting him feel her love, before finally speaking up to tell him that all may not be lost. As it turned out, the remnants of his past decisions, which dragged him in the downward spiral he was in now, were still retrievable, and he had a chance of redemption. But she warned him that these consequences were going to take him back to the dark days of his teenage life, and demanded that he give her an assurance of his willingness and strength to face any consequence that may come his way. Mick nodded, not saying a word, just knowing in his heart that he was ready to fight for his future and for his salvation. His mother smiled and kissed his forehead, then told him to get the things he needs and to prepare for a long journey. Mick took heed and bid his mother goodbye. He collected his belongings, set to face the consequences of his past, and entrusted his future. He had to believe that his redemption was near.
Comment below and subscribe to not miss the next story.